Alright, so I've been having problems with this Zenith radio. It's a 4T26. It's drawing too many amps on the AC side. The radio case says 40 watts, and it's drawing over 50, and it's drawing over a half amp of AC amperage. So I think it's 0.54 amps as it's drawing. The radio works, however, not all that well, but it does work. So I've been troubleshooting, as best I can. I thought I had one of these mica capacitors that were originally, with the radio were shorted, so I've disconnected every one of them and checked them, and they're not shorted, and the capacitance is right where it should be. I've checked the RF coils, I've checked the antenna coils, I've checked the oscillator coils, I've checked this choke, I've checked everything I possibly can that I can think of, and it still draws too much power. So I came up with an idea on how to troubleshoot this, possibly to figure out if it's the transformer or the power supply. So I started with disconnecting the main power supply, the B plus part of the transformer. So I did that. This tie point right here, this tie point is actually on the tube itself. So I've disconnected this. I've disconnected this lead from here. So the only thing that's hooked up is this wire going to supply your B plus, and our center tap, I've disconnected it, and I put this in its place. So here is the ground side where the center tap went, and here is the positive where the output from the 5Y3 supplies the radio with the 220 volts. And I didn't mention that when the transformer is hooked up, the supply voltage is about 190, if I remember right. I know it's a little bit low, and I thought, well, that's okay. It's not, because I am running it through the well, I guess that was with the dim bulb tester bypassed, so I really don't have an excuse. That's why I was thinking something was shorted in the radio. So when I pulled all the tubes out of the radio, and it's still drawing 0.33 amps with no tubes in the radio with the transformer hooked up. So I've got this in place of the power supply, the 220 volts. So I've got this on standby. It's warmed up. We'll watch the amp meter here, because this is a 1 amp scale. So, or a 1.5 amp scale. Sorry, 1.5 amp scale. So if the radio B plus was the problem, then we'll see the amp draw here go up to 3. So we'll go ahead and bring the voltage up here. So we're at 200. Okay, that's about 210, I believe. And the amp draw is nothing. So and we'll check the voltage with this to make sure that we are. I can't really put this where you can read it. We'll check the voltage here. So we're just a little bit, 203 volts and 0 amps. So it's not the B plus. The B plus is not the problem with this radio. So the other thing it could be, I've checked the resistance of the transformer, and I can't, it all appears to be close to where it should be. Put this back on standby. Actually, I'll turn this off. It's where it should be, I believe. And it's where it should be, I believe, and the resistances of the transformer. So that's what's kind of bothering me. So my next step now is to disconnect since I pulled the tube, since I pulled the, pardon me, I pulled one of the wires off of the filament supply to the transformer for the 5-volt supply that just goes to this and your B plus. So the only other thing really connected is the 6-volt for the rest of the filaments for the radios. That's the only other thing that can be shorted. So if I disconnect those, they're out of the circuit though, because they're still connected in series. So with the tubes removed, it would have to be transversed somewhere along the way. Because they do go to ground. And this isn't actually here, it's at several different spots along the way where they're grounded. So if I disconnect this, be my next step, and then plug the transformer back in and monitor the amperage. And if the amperage goes down, then we know we have a problem either with the wiring or with this part of the transformer. Yeah, I'm suspecting that the problem is here though, on the primary side for some reason. I don't know why I think that, but I do. I will come back when I get those wires disconnected, and we'll monitor the amperage, and I'll get this power supply out of here, and well, we'll show you when I get to that point. Okay, I've got the I've got the 6-volt filament wires disconnected. The rest of the wires just go to the rectifier socket and the tubes out of it, so they're just pins. And I've checked continuity to ground, and between all the wires I see no cross continuity, nothing to ground from this. So it would be the same thing as these wires being disconnected. The other filament, the other 5-volt filament wire, and the two high voltage transformer wires are just going to empty pins. So I've eliminated the wiring from for the pardon me, for the 6-volt filament, and I'm going to turn this on. And the radio is on. It's 118 volts. All the tubes pulled out of the radio, and those wires disconnected, and that thing is still drawn 0.3 amps, 35. So 34 watts, 0.3 amps. That seems like a lot for just a transformer. I don't know. I mean, the the labeling on the radio on the thing said it was 40 watts. So I'm pretty sure there's something wrong with that transformer. I'm going to unhook the other wires and pull that transformer out of there, and we'll take a look at the transformer and see if we could see what's wrong with it. I'll be back. Got all the wires disconnected to the transformer, and I got one of the screws out while it was still on its side, and it was just very unstable to do it while it was on its side, so I flipped it up in this position. I was going to hang it off the edge of the workbench, you know, and then use the, you know, an extension up underneath to hold the nuts, and then use the screwdriver, you know, to turn the screws. And I seen this wax coming out of this. Now this is like the wax that's on a frickin' paper capacitor. The other transformers I've messed with had that, of this, you know, vintage, had that black tar in there, not wax. So, kind of wondering what's going on in there. I'm going to get this out and take it apart. Maybe I could see what's wrong with it. It is strange that there's wax like that coming out of there. Now, I had this on for about 25-30 minutes when I first turned it on and was trying to get stations, you know, seeing how it ran. I seen that it was drawing a little bit too much power, but I heard the radio making noise and I wanted to see how well it worked, and I just, you know, I had it on for about a half an hour checking voltages and the such while it was on its side. I had not tipped it down since that time. So, and I didn't notice this had gotten hot, and it doesn't look like it's been getting hot either. The paint's still on it. That's what's really weird about this. So I'll get it apart and take a look inside there, and I'll come back when I get it apart. We'll see what's in there. Well, I got it apart. Don't really see anything obvious. The wires are pretty smashed up against the side, you know, where they go in. There's quite a bit of wax in here, but I don't know. That brown wax coming out of there like that, I thought for sure I'd find a, well, I don't know. Well, I really don't understand why it would be drawn just like a tenth, you know, like 10 more watts than it should. So I did find a place that does work on, pardon me, I did find a place that does work on these, that will rebuild them. It works though. That's the thing. Usually they'll just burn up and be done. Maybe it's on the verge of going. I'm not sure. So I really don't have the means to rewind this myself. So I'm going to have to look into this a little further as to what's going on with it. I cannot find any specifications for this particular. See, there's melted wax in here. I cannot find any particular. I cannot find the specifications for this particular transformer. As a matter of fact, according to the schematic and paperwork that I have for this radio, there's 3 different transformers that could be in it. And the difference is the cycles, 60, 50, and 25. And one of them's a variable voltage. So I'm assuming it could be, yeah, I'm not sure. 60, 50, and 25. So there's 3 different transformers that could be in here. But apparently they're all 115 volts. I don't know why you would need a variable voltage. I'm not understanding that. But I cannot find a part number on this. Oh, right there. It's 297. Why couldn't I see that when it was in the radio? A95. I don't know if you can see that. It's upside down for you. I don't know if I can get a shot of it with it. Yeah. So it's a 95927. That part number is the 60 cycle 115 volt transformer. So I wonder why I couldn't see that before. I looked all over this thing. I'm just blind, I guess. So apparently there's nothing to see here. Move along. Not sure what's going on with this. So it looks like we're at a standstill until I could come up with another transformer to test anyway. I would assume without anything hooked up that the wattage of this transformer is going to be fairly low without any of the tubes in the radio, and with all these wires disconnected, I don't understand why it would be so high at 30 I mean, 34 watts, 35 watts. I mean, that seems incredibly high, especially when there's, you know, the radio is only supposed to be 40 watts. So, all right. Thanks for watching, and leave a comment down below. Okay, got the transformer out. We looked at it earlier, put it back together, and I'm going to do one more test to it, which I had not done yet, with all of the wires disconnected and none of them touching. They're all separated here. I've got the my little test jumper cable hooked up here, which goes to my isolation transformer. I figure if there's something wrong with it, it's going to get warm just being turned on. It should not get warm unless there's a load on it. So I'm looking at the temperature. So it's 71.4. Let's turn it this way a little bit, because I think this side's going to get hotter first. .6. So let's go ahead and turn this on. This should be at 117 volts. Yep. And it's drawing 0.33 amps. 36 watts. And I figure we let this run for, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes here, a couple minutes. Could set a timer, but I don't think it's going to take long for it to warm up. It must have a small short in it somewhere that's just not showing up, because I don't have the specs, you know, the resistance specifications for this particular transformer. Sometimes they give you that information in the you know, on the schematics and stuff, but they didn't with this one. So oh, it's been just a few minutes, just a minute here, so let's see where we're at now. Still about the same. I really don't want to get shocked. Still about the same. So we'll let it sit here for a minute, and I'll set a timer for 10 minutes, and then I'll come back and show you what the temperature's at. And the amperage has dropped now to 0.28. Doesn't make sense why. Well, maybe because it's getting warm. The amperage is dropping. We're down to 31 watts. 31.4 watts. With no load on it. That's ridiculous. We'll be back in 10 minutes or so. It is exactly 1:30 in the afternoon. I'll be back at 1:40. Well, it's been 11 minutes since I plugged this thing in, or turned it on and started the timer. So let's see where we're at. Almost 112 degrees. This side's not getting as warm, but it's still 107. So the transformer is definitely the problem. I spent a lot of time troubleshooting that radio, thinking there was something shorted. So not sure what I'm going to do about this, what I'm able to do about it. I've got some feelers out looking for another one. I've been looking on eBay for another radio I could rob parts out of. I hate doing that. I think these radios should be saved. I don't know. It's a big part of history. American history. When I come up with a solution, I'll let you know. Thanks for watching. Well, I got the transformer out of it, which I showed you before, and I thought, well, what the heck? Let's use the old PS4 Heath kit to check it out. So I've got the pardon me, I have the rectifier tube out of the radio. Pardon me. And I've got the 6.3 hooked up to the rest of the tubes for their filaments. And I have the high voltage hooked up to where the output of the rectifier tube would have went to. And I've got the ground side where the center tap would have went to the speaker. So we'll turn, and I've got the Heath kit plugged into the isolation transformer still. So we'll go ahead and put that on standby. And the light came on for the you know, the pilot light on the radio, so the 6.3 filaments are all working. We'll let this run here for a few seconds. See what happens. And we'll go ahead and turn the main power up here. Oh, wait a second. We're on standby. Make sure this is turned down all the way. We're on high. So we're watching this voltage here, and we're watching the amperage here. So this is in milliamps. So there's 200, 210, or 220, 220. And we'll turn the volume up.
Oh my gosh, the hospital beds are being overrun. It is just not true. And
so it's working,
does not mean
but the volume has to be turned up all the way.
COVID can be incredibly scary.
So that indicates something in the front end of the radio. But I was more concerned with the amp draw. So 25 milliamps, if I'm not mistaken, is 0.25? Is that a quarter of an amp? I believe that's a quarter of an amp on that scale. Because I believe this red line is at 1 amp. And that's the max of this power supply for the high voltage output. We have a 4 amp max here, and we have a 1 amp on the low power. I don't remember what the max is. If it's 1 amp as well, I can't remember now, because it's not really marked. So, and touching the, see, I can, if I touch the grid of the first tube, which I believe, I'll have to look at the schematic. I printed a schematic for this. I gotta find it now. Is it on the other? Yeah, this is it. So it's the 6A6. It's the 6A6. We're using this part down here because it's a late. It's not the early, it's the late. So, and our volume is in the RF section. And this is our antenna coil. So, I'm not sure if it's an adjustment with the alignment that could be causing this problem. I'm not sure. We gotta mess around with it some more. There could be a bad resistor that I haven't changed yet. There's a couple of them that I haven't changed yet because they weren't too far out of specification. If they were, I was more concerned about the amp draw. And we're seeing the amp draw isn't that high, 0.25. This is, like I said, this thing was marked at 40 watts. So, and I do have a resistor kind of I do have a resistor that's not fully soldered because I had to remove the volume to get to where the filament wires were hooked to that tube. So this resistor right here is just kind of sitting in there. It's not real soldered, but it's making connection. And I don't think that's the problem either. That resistor comes off the volume switch.
Have actually been used.
So that's full volume.
Dr. Bob,
That should be a lot louder, I
the
think.
administration.
It provides your body that sort of first get up and go.
But I thought it would be interesting to put this thing, turn this off. I thought it'd be interesting to see this Heathkit power supply run this radio, and I just think it's really cool that that they have something like that, and it does prove that that there isn't a problem in the radio itself. We're drawing so low amps. We're hardly drawing any amps at all. So I believe that's a 1/4 amp. And so, all right, there it is. It's going to be a while. I think I may have located another transformer, a Hammond that might work. I'm going to check into it a little bit further and see if it will. I appreciate you watching, and have yourselves a good one.